visual ethnography, which is a subfield of ethnography, a practice and discipline that seeks to analyze and explore the contextual realities and relations of group dynamics from an outside perspective. As a group, in situating ethnography of individual, we are to contextually analyze the Rhodes Must Fall movement for the various intersections of race, class, gender, and voice through the lens of visual ethnography. And through the lens of visual ethnography, we are to explore the many thematic arenas at play, as the campaign found itself within UCT's grounds in protest against the colonial institution. Originally directed against a statue that commemorates this colonial icon, Cecil John Rhodes, the Rhodes Must Fall campaign marked the beginning of the largest wave of student protests in democratic South Africa. Across the country, students called for the decolonization of UCT's dominant model of Western Eurocentric knowledge, calling for the university to construct their own decolonial framework compromised with Pan-Africanism, Black consciousness, and Black radical feminism.
Race and class are intrinsically entwined in the context of South Africa, given the extent of the apartheid legacy. Through the implementation of legislation such as the Bantu Education Act and its extension into the university, the apartheid government aimed to initiate a rift between the white elite and black population in controlling their access to education and consequently also the jobs that they had access to for the generations to come and the economy. Post-1994, retribution at a nationwide scale was not fully implemented. The Fees Must Fall movement protested against the raising of fees on the grounds that it enabled the perpetuation of racialized class inequality. Considering this, the Rhodes Must Fall movement and the overreaching aim of both movements to attempt the decolonization of the institution and the challenging of the university's implicit role in the legacy of colonialism and apartheid, and its obligation to ensure the furthering of democracy as was proclaimed in 1994.
For many years, there has been a vast amount of research done on the experience of black students in predominantly white universities. This is particularly important in South African context given the history of apartheid and segregation schooling and higher education systems. Black students have contested and problematized this transformation project for its failings, particularly through the wave of student activism that swept the country in 2015. It brought with it a kind of activism which centered the experience of black students in its critique of institutional practices. At the University of Cape Town, it is found that black students often feel their sense of belonging becomes limited due to the exclusion practices on the part of the institution, which links to the location of the statue at the center of the most prestigious university in Africa. It was almost as if Rhodes was gazing on his conquest, wondering how far and for how long into time his colonizing powers could reach in taking over the land. The statue was a context reminder of how far and for whom the university was designed for.
The many voices of students involved in the Rhodes Must Fall movement were collectively unheard, misrepresented, and further abused by the dominating structure of the colonial hierarchies within UCT. As UCT's structure is seen actively subordinating the collective voice, whereby the intersection of class and race is seen at play. In using visual ethnography, we see how UCT's dominant white voices subordinate the many black voices within and around Rhodes Must Fall protest spaces on campus. Class within the university space at the time can be linked to the nations of blackness and the alienation of the middle class. The reference to privileged black people suggests that black middle class students were not really considered black in relation to the struggle for decolonization. This led to the alienation of the middle class and caused them to feel as though they were not really allowed to protest along with their peers, as they were seen to be less effective than the lower class. However, there is no worse oppression than the oppression of the oppressed. People would state that the middle-class black students were romanticizing the violence in the protests. This was another form of denying the middle class the opportunity to take part in the protest, which led to a separate fight between the students and the university.
The hashtag Rhodes Must Fall movement captures the story of black feminists, women, and queer people who brought this movement to life. Assembling the Rhodes Must Fall movement gave these gender bodies an opportunity to dissect decolonization, how it speaks to them, and how they could achieve it through feminist politics. Historically, black women and queer people have been erased from the history of forming liberation movements. They have often been seen as nurturers and not as active participants. The hashtag Rhodes Must Fall movement was a space where black feminists, women, and queer people were clear about being recognized for their important contributions. They were determined to break the cycle of silencing their voices. It is important to note that black feminists, women, and queer people did not ask to be the movement, but rather they were the movement.
In responding with violence to the protesters, there was an attempt to silence their voices in ways that are reminiscent of oppressive powers of the past. The necessity to deconstruct and recenter in the attempts to decolonize the institution and the power that it represents, the protesters aim to challenge the institution. This mass congregation allowed for the intersections of race, class, and gender.